Hi, everybody, and welcome to this introduction to the second film in our Dreaming the World seminar. And this is from the continent that apparently is known as Oceania. I used to think it was called Australasia, but it turns out Oceania it is. And this is a film that's very close to my heart. In some respects, it's the closest film to my heart of all, because it's the only film that I've been present on the set for effectively the duration of the shooting of the film, for about 5 weeks. In late 2009, I got to be present in Auckland, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, while my friend Mike Riddell, who wrote the film, and his spouse Rosemary Riddell directed the film, went through what can only be called a labor of love, and a deep labor it was. I had read this novel, The Insatiable Moon, back in 1997, 1998, and it instantly became my favorite novel. It's a story about something rather unconventional, but it is drawn from some experiences that actually happened in Mike and Rose's lives. Mike was a Baptist pastor in inner city Auckland, a radical progressive pastor who once stripped to his underwear at a city council meeting as a way of embodying what he felt some people in the city council were trying to do by rezoning some land where folks who were experiencing homelessness had made into their home. They were living outside under a bridge, I believe, and the city council was trying to rezone the land effectively so they could get rid of these people who were vulnerable and experiencing really challenging circumstances. And Mike, as a minister, a well-known minister in the local area, went to the city council meeting, and in the period of public comment, he stood up and said, "I want to show you what you're doing to the dignity of these people by taking their home away from them." And he stripped to his boxer shorts. This was not the first or the only time that he did something, let's call it visually creative, for the sake of the common good. When Mike died 3 years ago, I wasn't able to attend his funeral because of COVID restrictions in his country. And I got to watch the funeral online with a number of his friends from around the world. And I heard the second part of that story for the first time. And that was that in the wake of his prophetic action by stripping to his boxer shorts, a housing trust had been established that, if I'm remembering correctly, in the 35 or 40 years since this event happened, has provided housing to something like 500 people. Another story that I draw a lot of inspiration from happened in the early 1980s when the Springboks, the South African rugby team, toured Aotearoa, New Zealand, against the wishes of the majority of the people of Aotearoa, New Zealand. The government was happy to have the rugby tour for the kind of reasons that people often say, well, we should just have them because it will be good for the economy. But at the time, there was a cultural boycott of South Africa in place on behalf of the anti-apartheid movement. People like Archbishop Tutu had called for this cultural boycott, which really meant that people from outside South Africa who wanted to support the movement to end apartheid would agree to not buy South African goods or to not host racist apartheid endorsing, or at least apartheid complicit entities like the South African rugby team in touring their country. So of course, as such things are wont to do, the tour going ahead provoked a backlash and galvanized anti-apartheid activism in Aotearoa, New Zealand, which included Mike Riddell, again a Baptist pastor, probably in his late 20s, climbing onto the roof of a rugby stadium and unfurling the flag of the African National Congress, the ANC, the political party of Nelson Mandela. He was arrested and charged with trespass without intent to commit a crime, because that's considered a less serious charge than trespass with intent to commit a crime. And the day came for his trial, and he had a conversation with his lawyer beforehand and agreed what he was going to say. And his lawyer asked him questions about what he had been doing on that particular day, and he was able to get put into the record that he was opposing the monstrous apartheid regime and the complicity of the New Zealand government in inviting the Springboks to tour New Zealand against not only the wishes of the majority of South Africans, but also the majority of Kiwis, New Zealand people. And that unfurling the flag of the ANC was a statement, a declaration of freedom, justice, equality. And it's something that more people should participate in. Words to that effect. And then his lawyer said, I have one more question for you, Mr. Riddell, Reverend Riddell. And that is, when you carried out these actions, did you intend to commit a crime? And Mike said, of course I intended to commit a crime. And my understanding is that pretty much immediately the judge hit his gavel down and said, case dismissed. I loved Mike deeply, and I love Rose deeply. They are friends that I would love to be able to share with everyone I meet. Since Mike's death, I miss him all the time. I'm deeply grateful for over a quarter of a century of friendship with him. I'm deeply grateful for continued friendship with Rose. And I'm deeply grateful for this story about Arthur, a Maori man, a man who is experiencing homelessness, a man who is wandering the streets of Ponsonby, which at the time was a fairly run-down part of Auckland, and a man who has come to believe that he is the second son of God. And while conventionally and clinically he would probably be diagnosed with schizophrenia, Mike, who as a pastor actually knew a man called Arthur, a Maori man, a man who was experiencing rough times and who believed he was the second son of God, what Mike decided to do was to write a story as if Arthur might have known something that he didn't know. This story became an astonishing novel. The novel resulted in Mike being, in his words, leaving the employment of a theological college by mutual consent, because there's some things in the story that the college didn't like. But he actually felt liberated by that, and he maintained a connection with life-giving religion and life-giving Christianity for the rest of his life. Reading this story when I was 22 or 23 years old blasted like dynamite. You know, in quarries, when they're blasting the quarry to bring down the rocks, it blasted like dynamite the edifice of separatist religion, scapegoating religion, dry and dusty, judgmental religion that was part of me. It blew that apart. And the unusual thing was, it did not leave me with nothing. A lot of people have a sort of a destructive experience that breaks their reliance on a form of religion or a form of community that is not serving life, not serving the common good, but it's not replaced by anything else. The beauty of this novel and the beauty of this film is that dynamiting makes room for grace. The film is an act of grace. The journey that it took to make the film, you'll hear a bit about that when you watch the video that I'm so pleased we have of a conversation that Mike and Rose and I had about it a few years ago. The journey was not an easy one, but at every step of the way, someone or someones chose to step into Let's just call it the flow of grace, where instead of being restricted by scarcity or judgmentalism or unnecessary struggle, somebody chose to prioritize abundance, that there is enough, and acceptance that, well, if I was him, I'd probably do it the same way as he is, and ease, which is that there are some things that don't need to be a fight. There is goodness. And as Mary Oliver and Wendell Berry and many other poets teach us, sometimes the thing to do is to lie down in the grass and let yourself be held by that. I hope that for you there are parts of this film, or maybe the film as a whole, might induce that feeling, or at least remind you that life doesn't always have to be a struggle. So enjoy The Insatiable Moon.